We're doing a show. Welcome, y'all. Happy Monday. You know what to do. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can see me. I think we're in the building. Wow, we've got a lot to get into today. We're starting with the Kelsey Fitz Simmons trial. I'm going to be struggling with that name. I wish we could watch and go through the whole thing because this trial is going to be absolutely insane. If you don't know the trial I'm talking about, we'll get into it. We're going to talk about an attorney getting, humbled before the Georgia Supreme Court, along with other comments and content as well. So I gotta say what's up to the people. Thank y'all for being in here. I appreciate y'all continuing to show love, and I gotta shout out everyone who makes this show the amazing place that it is. First, shout out to my beautiful, awesome, amazing Amy E in here, being amazing. Amy, thank you for everything that you do. Y'all show Amy some love, and also go follow her over on X at @IamyLee on X. Jay Buckmaster's in the building. We got CPE in here. Taco Tuesday is in here a day early. Guys, I am super excited about something. I actually did not have this ready and prepared for you guys, but if you follow the YouTube channel, you know what's going down tomorrow. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock a.m., we are going to be interviewing and have an exclusive interview with Greg Dolezal. This interview is going to be absolutely amazing. I got to go and click and actually find it for y'all so I can show you the thumbnail so you know where to go. This is going to be an amazing interview. If you've been watching the show for any length of time, you've seen what we've covered with the work that Senator Greg Dolezal is doing here in Georgia, and specifically in Fulton County, covering everything that's been going on with the election fraud. We got to see him be on the streets, showing exactly where there are places thousands of people are registered at a business, at a place that used to be a home, at a home that's vacant, and even empty parking lots and a UPS. We're going to talk to him about that, a bunch of stuff he has going on as he runs for lieutenant governor here in Georgia. So please make sure you guys tune in for that interview tomorrow. It's going to be a great time, and I'm very excited and honored to have Senator Dolezal, let me put some respect on his name, on the show. So make sure you guys tune in for that. We're going to go ahead and get right into the content. So if y'all could, please make sure you like the video on your way in. Likes are free, helps the channel continue to grow. It takes less than a second to do. And I know you guys are going to enjoy the show here. It helps the video and this live stream get out to more people. So thank you to the nearly 500 of you that have liked the video so far. If you're feeling extra generous, you can share the video as well to any social media platform you're on. And you can even share it via text message to anybody that you'd like. Last but not least, I will be reading super chats at the end of the show. So thank you to everybody who goes the extra mile and supports the show and donates and sends in super chats and helps keeps the lights on here on the show. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. This one is going to be interesting. We got to talk about Kelsey Fitzsimmons. Wow, this trial is going to be crazy. If you guys have not heard what's going on with the Kelsey Fitzsimmons trial, it's about to get interesting. Kelsey Fitzsimmons, police were called to her house. Interesting thing about that, she is actually a police officer. She was on leave, having some issues, just had a baby, was going back and forth. We'll get into the details a little bit later. But the police come into the house, and allegedly Kelsey Fitzsimmons seemed distraught. She had a gun. She wanted to use it in some way, whether that was against herself or the police. The police believed that she was going to use it against them, and they actually shot Kelsey multiple times. Then she went to the hospital. Thank God she survived. And now she's actually on trial for assault. Well, she's on trial for multiple things. I won't get into the exact details yet because we're going to actually get into the opening statements here in a minute. But I wanted to do a review for you guys and give you more information about what's going on in this trial. In another video, we're actually going to talk about some text messages that were released as well. This case gets crazy. Check it out from NBC in Boston. Here we go.
Now, a former North Andover police officer is going on trial tomorrow. This case has drawn a lot of controversy since the night she was shot by a fellow officer back in June. She has waived her right to a jury, and a judge will now decide the fate of Kelsey Fitzsimmons. NBC 10's Mary Marcos is joining us live outside of Essex Superior Court in Lawrence this evening with what we can expect as this gets started tomorrow, Mary.
Well, Amelia, this is a case of he said, she said that centers around one thing. What happened in that room when shots were fired? Last summer, police showed up at Kelsey Fitzsimmons' North Andover home to serve a restraining order from her ex-fiance. Police say she pointed a gun at them, but her attorneys say she pointed it at herself. Moments later, her coworker shoots her. She survives, but the criminal charges land on her. Prosecutors insist this case is simple. What happened inside that room? But the defense is painting a much bigger picture. Postpartum depression, a messy custody battle, and even claims of corruption inside the department. Her ex-fiance, North Andover firefighter Justin Alayan, is now on administrative leave and accused of breaking into the home days later to grab evidence.
Insane.
He says he had every right to be there. And just days before the trial, Fitzsimmons made a big move, waiving her right to a jury. The judge alone will decide her fate. NBC 10 legal analyst Michael Coyne says that's because the defense might be banking on a more technical reading of the law.
That the judge will be better able to parse this case and decide this is really a case that hinges on credibility. And when it does hinge on credibility like this, the benefit of the doubt goes to the defendant because it's the government's obligation to prove their charges.
Smart move.
The trial starts with opening statements at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's only expected to last a few days, so we could have a verdict by the end of the week. Live in Lawrence, Mary Marcos, NBC 10 Boston.
Which is insane because this is the first trial we've covered on this channel where the judge is actually going to be making the decision here. Along with a lot of the information that was shown, this is going to be interesting to say the least because there's a custody battle, firefighter boyfriend who actually broke into the house. We're going to address that in the next video, but let's actually see what's going to happen and how this is going to go down. And then we'll actually get into some of the opening statements during this trial. Check this out again from NBC News 10 in Boston.
Well, former North Andover police officer is set to go on trial tomorrow. Now, this is a case that's stirred up a lot of controversy since the night she was shot by one of her own colleagues last summer. And after waiving her right to a jury, the fate of Kelsey Fitzsimmons will now rest in the hands of a judge. NBC 10's Mary Marcos is at Essex Superior Court in Lawrence with what we can expect.
A judge will decide Kelsey Fitzsimmons' fate, and legal experts say it won't take long.
It's a classic he said, she said case at the end of the day.
Last summer, police went to her North Andover home to serve a restraining order and give her ex-fiance custody of their child. Police say she pointed a gun at them. Her attorneys insist she pointed it at herself. Moments later, her coworker shot her.
There were only two people in that room.
Insane.
She is one of the people who could testify, but she's not required to. But the Commonwealth will have to produce the other officer who will testify.
Her ex-fiance, North Andover firefighter Justin Alayan, is now on administrative leave, accused of breaking into the home days later to grab evidence. He says he had every right to be there.
There is an open question whether her former fiance will testify and talk about her struggles and the like with postpartum depression.
Just days before trial, Fitzsimmons made a big move, waiving her right to a jury. NBC 10 legal analyst Michael Coyne says that suggests the defense is counting on a more technical reading of the law.
The judge will be better able to parse this case and decide this is really a case that hinges on credibility. And when it does hinge on credibility like this, the benefit of the doubt goes to the defendant because it's the government's obligation to prove their charges.
The trial gets underway with opening statements at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It is expected to take just a few days, so we could have a verdict by the end of the week. Reporting in Lawrence, Mary Marcos, NBC 10 Boston.
And we're going to get into those opening statements shortly. I want to know what you guys think about this move by Kelsey Fitz Simmons and her team. Was it a smart move for her to not take this to a jury, let the judge decide? I honestly, looking at this case and looking at how much sympathy she'd be able to garner from a jury, I can see how she would win this even if it went to a jury, because I've been on her side since day one. Although some of the facts surrounding this were weird. Obviously, we believe in innocent until proven guilty here, but the evidence and the facts that were presented so far didn't seem like everything went down as the police were saying. Now, we're actually going to hear from Kelsey and her team in this video to where they talk about their thought process behind actually moving forward and letting the judge decide the verdict in this instance. Here we go.
About what happened on that day in June.
That's Kelsey's mother.
She's wanted a fair trial. She decided, and we've talked with her about it, that trying to get to that fair trial, an option with the judge is the most efficient and best way to do that.
Smart.
And so, as you can see, the judge made a full inquiry of her. Everybody has a right to a jury trial, but they also have a right to a judge trial. And we are prepared to start on Monday and move forward to make sure that the truth comes out, and we're confident that it will.
Why did you decide this was the better venue for the truth to come out? Like, why is the judge a better person to decide that than a jury?
So it's not a question of better or not. It's a question of knowing this case, the facts of this case, unusual facts, by the way, with 2 police officers involved. There is a certain amount of credibility that the fact finder has to make. And we thought it was important to make sure whenever we did with a jury or a judge that we would be able to stick to the facts of what happened on that day. Kelsey has been transparent about what happened. She's spoken about it. There is sometimes in these cases a lot of excess noise around it. And it's important to her and to us, her counsel, to make sure, as we always do, that when we go to trial, we are going to have a fair finder of fact. And we just felt, all things being equal, really, that choosing a judge trial, what we call a bench trial, made the most sense in this case.
Is that a very specific question that needs to be answered in this case? Is that maybe a judge could do that more efficiently than a juror who might start to get cloudy if they're bringing in text messages from that day? And can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, the judge's job in a jury trial is always to keep out extraneous information, to make sure that whatever comes in, whatever the decision is based on, is relevant and not too prejudicial. You heard some of that today, and the judge making those decisions. But because there is, in this case particularly, we think unusual circumstances, that keeping the focus, a laser focus on the facts, what does the evidence allow in? What's relevant? What's probative of what happened? And where we have 2 somewhat conflicting stories, shall I say, we felt that making sure that we could have a trier of fact who would focus on that. And look, I have a great deal of respect for judges. Both Attorney Bradel and I have tried a number of jury cases, and they are interesting and they are important. And some cases are just better suited, we believe, for a judge to make a determination. As we've said, it is a simple case. We want to keep it simple, we want to keep it to the facts, and we believe with this option that's what will happen.
Do you think it's still going to be a 3-day trial?
It could be. If we start Monday and we go full hours from 9 to 4, it is quicker with the judge, just because jurors sometimes are late and they need to take breaks, and that's not a criticism of them, they're people. But we think it can probably move a little more quickly. And so it's hard to know, but I would think maybe 3 days. I think so. But you never know, but probably it'd be quicker than trying to impanel a jury. As the judge noted, impaneling the jury could take longer than actually trying the case. And so we'll be able to start Monday, we'll get right to it. The Commonwealth also does this, tries bench trials all the time, and so it's not that unusual that we're doing this.
Kelsey,
how do you feel about this approach of the bench trial?
I made a good decision with it. I chose the judge to be the fact finder of the case, and I think that's just makes the most sense in my case.
Do you think, did you make the decision during the motions process? He seems like he's been definitely accommodating, he seemed very impartial going through all the hearings. And when did you guys make the decision, if you're able to say?
So Bob, lawyers are always very jealous about their decision-making process, their, kind of how you make the sausage, so to speak. But, bench trials, in Martha's, in my experience, you know them when you see them. And this is a good occasion for a bench trial. We're excited about it. It's going to be economic. It's going to be efficient. Kelsey and Martha and I and Courtney as well, we always have an ongoing discussion. We always joke that we're talking about 4 things at once, and it's just an ongoing thing. And we felt that Judge Karp has been extremely fair. We have not been happy with the pretrial process up until landing in Lawrence, and now we're pleased and we feel heard. We feel like we have a good seat at the table, and we're going to go from there.
So on the docket, it lists a new judge for the jury trial. Is that just a mistake, or?
I think there's a lot of computer static that happens on those lists, and that's why I didn't want anybody to read too much into it.
Do you think that social media affects, or what effect does it have on, the choice of a bench trial versus a jury trial? Do you think it's more difficult for attorneys in that way now?
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
Just, how social media affects, your decisions in cases, whether you want to do a bench trial versus a jury trial. Does it have an effect?
I don't think so much in this case. It might in others. It certainly requires extra precautions by both counsel, by the judge who's trying to get a jury that is not aware of or has reached a decision about a case is a little harder, obviously, with social media. In this case, it's not going to be an issue because it's jury waived, but that was not one of the deciding factors for us, frankly.
Was the public's general sense of skepticism for law enforcement playing a role at all? Kind of coming off of Reed with that investigation, finding a jury versus a judge. Did that weigh in at all with, obviously?
I don't think it did, and I watched that trial very closely, obviously, as many of us did. Different set of facts, different dynamics. Here it is much more simple. It is something that happened one day. There's 2 police officers involved. It's just a different dynamic. So I don't think that entered into our decision making at all.
And also, Bob, don't forget, we got a law enforcement lady right here.
That's what I was wondering.
So, you know, I think there's just as much support for law enforcement as there is skepticism, you know, and it's really more about the actual facts of this case. And, you know, we've never shied away from that. We've been eager to get here. So we're glad we're here. I know Kelsey's glad we're here. And, you know, she's been on the job. She was a CO. She's a patrol officer. She's served restraining orders. She knows this arena very well. So we're comfortable here, and we're pleased to go forward in this, right, Kelsey?
Yes, absolutely.
How you feeling Monday? It's Monday. You've been waiting so long.
Again, I'm eager. I've said from the very beginning the truth will come out, and it will.
Thanks,
Speaking
Kelsey.
of eager, it seemed like you smiled when you told the judge you were, excited to maybe restart law school. Are you looking forward to getting back into it?
A lot of my life was put on pause very unexpectedly, so I'm looking forward to getting back into everything. Most importantly, being a parent and mom to my son. But
yeah, and it's sad. Her child was taken away as a part of this as well.
going back to school is definitely in the cards.
Yeah, a lot to lose, a lot to gain from this trial for Kelsey Fitz Simmons. So we're going to get into the full trial here shortly. I want to know what you guys think about this in the comments in the chat. A lot of issues surrounding this case. I can understand them wanting to go the bench trial route in this instance because emotions can get involved with juries. Juries are so unpredictable, and it's really a he said, she said case, like they said before. So if you don't actually have hard evidence in this case, you have to decide, you know, who is actually going to get the benefit of the doubt here. Is it Kelsey? Is it the police officer who shot her? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Let me know what you guys think. And we're going to keep it moving, guys. Thank you to everybody who is in here. We're going to get a case update because I told y'all there was some interesting happenings going on with this case, as you already heard, with the boyfriend, or well, is he a boyfriend, ex-fiance? We'll call him ex-fiance, breaking into Kelsey Fitzsimmons' house. It's going to get crazy, and we'll keep it going right now as we get back into this Kelsey Fitzsimmons situation with her case now ongoing. I wanted to give you guys an update on what's happening surrounding the case and more recent updates and allegations, because now we're hearing that the boyfriend, shortly after Kelsey was shot and in the hospital, went back to her house. And according to Kelsey Fitzsimmons' attorneys, he went there to retrieve evidence. He went to take away evidence, went to, I don't know if you call it tampering with the crime scene, but either way, it gets interesting because he feels like he was allowed to go into her house. Not sure if they were living there at the time, maybe to get some things back. Let's hear what they have to say about this. Check this out from NBC News 10 in Boston.
New allegations this morning in the case of a North Andover police officer facing assault charges for an armed confrontation in her home.
Kelsey Fitzsimmons now claiming that her ex-fiance broke into her home just days after she was shot by officers who were serving her a restraining order, and she was arrested. NBC 10's Monica Medea live outside of Essex Superior Court with details on the filings ahead of today's big hearing. Monica.
Good morning. And this would have happened while Fitzsimmons was recovering in the hospital from that gunshot wound to the chest. Now, Kelsey Fitzsimmons does have a hearing today, and this video is coming just before that. Her trial is set for March. I want to show you that video now that we're talking about. It shows, according to her legal team, the baby's father, her ex-fiance, breaking into her home along with several other men 3 days after she was shot. Her attorneys say during this break-in, the Wi-Fi in the surveillance system was cut. They allege he stole her laptop and used it to steal money from her bank account and access her personal medical records, including stealing a letter he wrote calling her a good mother. Let's get to the history in this case, because that ex-fiance had previously received a restraining order against Fitzsimmons, claiming she assaulted him and threatened their infant son's life. So when police served the order and came to take her baby, that is when Fitzsimmons was shot. The officer who shot her claimed she pointed a gun at him while she was packing up her baby's things. She says she pointed the gun at herself. She wanted to kill herself. Fitzsimmons was in treatment for postpartum depression at the time. She has pleaded not guilty to a charge of assault with a dangerous weapon. That's what she will be on trial for. And this hearing, pre-trial hearing, this starts later this afternoon. Reporting live in Lawrence, Monica Medea, NBC 10 Boston.
And we're going to get into opening statements here shortly. But check this out as we have more information about what the boyfriend had to say. And we're actually going to hear from him and find out why he thought it was okay to do what he did.
With less than 3 weeks to the start of her trial, a North Andover police officer turned defendant is accusing her own department of misconduct. WBZ's Christina Rex shows us why.
I am more hopeful with this judge. He just seems reasonable and fair, the way a judge is supposed to act.
That's former North Andover police officer Kelsey Fitzsimmons on the new judge and new courtroom where she'll face trial for assault and battery with a dangerous weapon in just 3 weeks.
I like this judge.
This video, her lawyers believe, cracks her case wide open. It shows her former boyfriend and the father of her child entering her home 3 days after she was shot. Prosecutors say he got police permission to be there, but Fitzsimmons' lawyer claims he broke in, stole her laptop, money, and other evidence for her case.
This is an incredibly egregious thing this guy did.
Last summer, the former North Andover police officer allegedly pulled her service gun on a fellow officer who had responded to her home for a domestic incident. Prosecutors say the other officer then shot Fitzsimmons in the chest in self-defense.
Oh, just focus on Kelsey. Let's not worry about this guy. Don't look over here.
Fitzsimmons' lawyer says she's being targeted and other misconduct in the case is being ignored. Trial is set to start in 3 weeks, and tensions were high in this pretrial hearing in Lawrence.
Oh, that's great. I'm not interested. No, that's incorrect.
Fitzsimmons hasn't been allowed to see her son since the incident when he was 4 months old. She's been on house arrest for months awaiting trial.
I don't want to comment on it.
Thankfully, she didn't have to sit in jail.
I mean, as you can imagine, she's pulled in a million different directions here, and we have to get down to business, and that's hard for somebody in her position.
This trial is only supposed to take a few days. It's set to start on March 23rd, and the judge says he wants to do everything in his power to make sure it actually starts on that date. In Lawrence, Christina Rex, WBZ News.
Christina, thanks.
All right, so let's actually hear from the ex-fiance in this case. Even if he got, I don't know if he got permission. We're going to have to wait and see what the evidence shows. But him going to her house at that point and taking something that belonged to her, not a great look for you guys at all. Let's see what he had to say.
Let's go now to another NBC 10 Boston exclusive tonight as we are hearing from the former fiance of Kelsey Fitzsimmons, the North Andover police officer who was shot by a fellow officer. Fitzsimmons contends her fiance broke into her house days later to steal evidence in their ongoing child custody case. NBC 10's Robert Golston brings us the exclusive one-on-one.
Kelsey Fitzsimmons' estranged fiancé, Justin Alayan, sat down with NBC 10 Boston to share his side of the story. He did not want the interview recorded. He admits this is him with 3 others, forcing the door open to the home where he lived with Fitzsimmons until they're falling out. Alayan and his attorney shared documents they say prove he still lived there, and he told us, "I had every legal right to get into my own home to get my belongings and, more importantly, my son's belongings."
He has no rights to that house whatsoever.
Fitzsimmons' attorney Tim Bradle says when Alayan requested the restraining orders days earlier, he signed an affidavit that said he no longer lived there and lied to the officer when he asked for an escort.
He says that he still lives there. Completely contradicts what he already swore to the probate court judge, family court judge, to get the restraining order.
Bradle argued Alayan is not being charged because the DA needs him to testify against Fitzsimmons in the criminal case. He is on the witness list for Fitzsimmons' criminal case, but not a key witness.
He might be a background witness. He heard the shots, but as far as what happened in the bedroom, he has no idea.
Alayan told us he did not touch any of Fitzsimmons' stuff on the day in question, and he said he even called police when the alarm went off. He also told her father that day, "I tried to do everything to help your daughter." Fitzsimmons' criminal case will be back in court on Thursday with a trial scheduled to start on March 23rd. In Lexington, Robert Goulston, NBC 10 Boston.
And be sure to stay with us on the air and online for continuing coverage of the case against Kelsey Fitzsimmons once her trial gets underway.
And again, we're going to get into that shortly. I think this is going to not do well for the prosecution in this case. And honestly, I have a feeling the judge is going to see this in Kelsey Fitzsimmons' favor, especially considering the state she was in, her admitting that she did have the gun, she was having issues, and she wasn't trying to shoot the police officer. Now, in the defense of the officer, was it a dumb decision for her to pull the gun out? I think she would probably say that. I think she would also admit that she wasn't in a great state of mind. She was having certain issues, which is understandable. But should she be charged in that situation? I don't believe so. I don't think so from what we've seen. We're going to get into opening statements. We're going to hear exactly what each side is trying to say, how they're going to defend themselves. And I think Kelsey's going to get a win in this situation. Let me know what you guys think in the comments in the chat. We're going to hear from the judge shortly as well. I think he's a good judge. He seems to be pretty fair. And Kelsey stated that herself. But I want to know what you guys think about this. And thank you to everyone who's in here. Good to see so many of y'all joining. I know we had a little bit of a late start today. Shout out to D in the building. He said, heard so much about this case. I think she has been stitched up by her ex. Yeah, her ex did not like her. And not to mention, you know, the child that they have, unfortunately, Kelsey hasn't been able to see for a long time. Innocent until proven guilty. I mean, we stand with the defendant in this case, and we'll have to see how things play out. Let's go ahead and get into the rest of the opening statements here. Samson's in the building. Tell Ray I said what's up. He's a good boy. Good to see you in here. And we got a ton of y'all in the building. If you guys could, please make sure you like the video on your way in. It's free. I promise it won't hurt. Do me a favor and like the video. Can't trust a mass judge. That's fair too, but you guys are going to hear from himself, and we'll be actually covering some of the testimony as we go throughout the couple of days of this trial going on. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for that as well. So we're going to go ahead and get into the opening statements by the prosecution, by the Commonwealth in the Kelsey Fitzsimmons trial. So make sure you guys let me know what you think about this in the comments in the chat. As we heard from Kelsey Fitzsimmons and her attorneys, this is really a he said, she said case. Kelsey Fitzsimmons was in her house. The police came in and she had a gun. The police tell her not to use the gun. She raises the gun. According to her, it is to harm herself. According to police, they felt like they were in danger. And now we're at a point to where we have to figure out who's telling the truth. Now, even though there isn't a jury in this case, this is a bench trial and the judge is going to be deciding the verdict. We still have a voice here. So I want you guys to let me know what you think as we listen to the opening statements from the Commonwealth. Check this out.
The defendant raised her gun, leveled
allegedly
it at Pat Noonan's face, and pulled the trigger. There are two reasons that Pat Noonan is alive today. The first being that Ms. Fitzsimmons' gun, while it had a full magazine, it did not have a round in the chamber. The second reason is that Pat Noonan, based on his years and decades of training and experience, reacted in a calm, professional way when he protected both himself and everyone else in that house. Pat Noonan is 50 years old. He is married to his wife Angie for 25 years. He has a
Congratulations
son,
to them.
Jonathan, who goes to school locally, college. He grew up in New York State at first and moved to Massachusetts to North Andover when he was 4 years old. He moved here with his father, his mother, his older sister. He went through the North Andover public school systems and eventually went to St. John's Prep, where he graduated from. He eventually spent a bit of time in college, but his real goal was to join the military, which he did. He joined the Air Force and went to boot camp out west.
Thank you for your service.
He eventually joined the security forces of the Air Force, where he was trained to secure nuclear weapons. He did that pretty much his whole time while he was in the Air Force. It was specialized training, weapons training, stress shooting training, defensive tactics training. His first assignment was on the ground in a Humvee. Later on, he joined another squadron and patrolled in a helicopter. He was honorably discharged from the Air Force, and he came back to North Andover. There, he worked security, armed security, at the Seabrook nuclear power plant. All the while, his goal being become a police officer, which he eventually did in North Andover. He worked in the North Andover police for years. It was his hometown police force. He joined the SWAT team, which is a specialized unit that deals with emergent violent situations, barricaded people, hostage situations, serving armed warrants and the like. It was during that time that they trained twice a month and 40 hours in a separate block a year. He did that for years at North Andover. He eventually transferred to the Lawrence Police Department. And he did that because he wanted to have a busier atmosphere. Lawrence is a lot busier than North Andover. He worked there for a number of years. Again, the SWAT team, he was a detective, had his specialized training. And back in 2024, he decided to make a switch and come full circle. He moved back to North Andover PD, both because he wanted to end his career there where he started, but he also wanted to bring his training and experience to his hometown police force. That was one of the reasons that Lieutenant Daley, on June 30th of 2025, asked Pat Noonan to accompany him and Timothy Houston, another officer who was a military vet, to serve a restraining order on Kelsey Fitzsimmons. He knew Pat had the experience, the temperament, and was cool, calm, and collected no matter what happened. Kelsey Fitzsimmons was a police officer. She had been on leave, but she was a police officer on June 30th of 2025. Also on that day, her partner, her boyfriend, her fiance, Justin Allain, was concerned for his safety, for his 4-month-old child's safety that he shared with the defendant, and for Ms. Fitzsimmons' safety, specifically after events happened that weekend. And so we went to court, and he applied for and was granted a restraining order. The restraining order granted him custody of his 4-month-old son, ordered the defendant not to have any contact and to stay away from him, and also that she would be relieved of her weapons. She was a police officer, and she had a service weapon and 2 other guns that she had legally. Lieutenant Daley was at the PD when Mr. Allain came in. The restraining order was faxed in the court, and Lieutenant Daley called Officer Houston, and they got in touch with Officer Noonan to serve that restraining order. They had gone by the defendant's home, Officer Houston did, to see if she was there. Unusually, her car was not in her parking space. It wasn't at her home. Officer Houston, who had seen it there thousands of times as he had driven by, noticed that it was parked down the street at a school about 100 yards away or so. So they knew she was in the area. The three met at the school, decided on a plan, and went to the defendant's home. They met her at the door, and you'll see surveillance video from the home of that encounter as they come to the door. Ms. Fitzsimmons comes to the door holding her 4-month-old child. They go into the house. There's no surveillance system in the house other than in the basement. They explained to her what was happening, that there was a restraining order, that there's going to be a hearing on July 14th where she'd be able to tell her side of the story. And she tells the officers, I know how this all works. They ask her where her firearms are, and she lies to them, and she tells them they're in the basement. She's sitting down on a couch, the baby is next to her. She calls her mother, who will soon come over, and they tell her that Justin's coming also, because he's going to get custody of the baby. Officer Houston, who is also in the living room, sees a gun case on the sofa, and he opens it. Ms. Fitzsimmons lies to him again. I told you the guns are in the basement. The defendant's mother comes, takes custody of the child while they're waiting for Justin. The police have called Mr. Alayan at the PD, so he's coming over with his sister, Courtney. The officers allow the defendant to walk around the house gathering baby stuff, equipment, clothing, and things like that, so the child will have what it needs when it's taken by Mr. Alayan. They follow her around to make sure that she is safe, that they are safe, that everybody in the house is safe. They go upstairs, they come downstairs. They go upstairs again, and you'll see photos of this, Your Honor. It's a staircase. At the top of the staircase is a landing where there's shelving and some of her police gear. If you look to the left is the baby room. If you look to the right, it's the bedroom. There's no door on the bedroom. So she goes in the baby's room and she's gathering things, and she's handing it to the officers who aren't going to take possession of it. They put it down. They're following the protocol. They're trying to keep everyone safe. At some point, she's in the bedroom, and Mr. Alayan comes in the house, and she hears him. Now it's Officer Noonan and Officer Houston in the bedroom with the defendant. She tells Officer Houston, I don't want him here. I don't want to see him. Don't let him near me. Because she's upset with Mr. Alayan. Officer Houston goes downstairs to make sure that doesn't happen. Mr. Alayan, who had left the house with some baby stuff, came back and asked the officers for permission just to go down to the basement. Because he wanted a suitcase, and he wanted some of the other baby stuff because he was taking the baby home, who lives in Stone, Massachusetts. So he did this. He was down in the basement. Lieutenant Daly is down on the first floor. Officer Houston is at the top of the stairs of the basement. And the defendant's mother is downstairs also. The baby is already gone because Courtney, Mr. Alayan's sister, had come with them, taken the baby, and left the house.
Dang.
Officer Noonan is standing on the landing watching the defendant in the bedroom. She's on her knees. She's gathering things. He notices at some point that her demeanor changes. She gets upset.
Allegedly.
At that point, she lunges to her right. Forward and to her right. And he can't see what she grabs, but she grabs a firearm. Turns out to be her service weapon. She comes back. She raises it. Before Officer Noonan can do anything, she pulls the trigger as it's leveled at his face, and it goes click.
I'm sorry.
It goes click, excuse me. It does not fire.
Allegedly.
Officer Newman takes out his gun, is yelling at her at this point. Kelsey, don't do it. Drop it. Kelsey, don't do it. She is stepping backwards now. The gun hadn't fired, and so she was doing what the officers will describe to you as a tack rack. She has the gun in her hand. She bangs the magazine and attempts to rack it. She's unsuccessful the first time. Officer Newman is still telling her, pleading with her, trying to de-escalate it. Kelsey, don't do it.
Allegedly.
She does it again, racks around. As she's picking up the gun, raising the gun, Officer Newman fires. He fires twice. She is now moving. He misses and then strikes her.
Dang.
She immediately goes down. Lieutenant Daly runs up. Officer Houston runs up. And they treat her. They call for an ambulance in the fire department, and she's eventually taken to the hospital. The gun that she used on Officer Newman was underneath her. Lieutenant Daly grabs it, puts it on the bed. Officer Newman, still focused on procedure and what to do, picks it up and moves it farther away from her so it's not a threat. That is eventually collected by Officer Poor, who shows up later. The credible evidence in this case, the only credible evidence in this case, I would suggest to you, Your Honor, will be that Kelsey Fitzsimmons raised the gun and pointed it at Officer Newman. She pulled the trigger when she did this. The credible evidence.
She was shot twice, by the way.
Will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty.
Thank you.
All right, opening statements for the Commonwealth. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Is it going to prove that she's guilty? Again, I don't know. I don't know if this is true or not. It's a he said, she said. So we're going to have to go through the trial and see who's more credible. It's a great story. Makes sense, but who's telling the truth? We'll have to find out. Y'all let me know what you think. And let's go ahead and get into the opening statements from the defense. But before I do, shout out to my beautiful, awesome, amazing Amy E in there dropping the super sticker. Reminding me not only that she has the cakiest cake in the building, but it is well past lunchtime. And I'm going to make sure that I take care of the lunch thing. Thank you, Amy, for showing love and everything on the channel. She does so much, guys. If you don't follow Amy, you are missing out. If you don't follow her YouTube channel, make sure you go check out her YouTube channel. Also, if you don't follow her on X, that is the best way to keep up to date on all the news that's happening that we cover here on the channel and that's happening in this county, in this state, and in our nation. So make sure you follow her at IAmyLeigh on X. That's at IAMYLEIGH on X. Y'all show her some love. All right, let's go ahead and get back into the rest of the court proceedings. We're going to hear from the defense now. So now we're going to get into the opening statements from the defense in this Kelsey Fitzsimmons trial. It'll be interesting to see what they say because we heard from the Commonwealth. They feel like what happened was the officer went in there. He gave Kelsey Fitzsimmons multiple times to put down the gun. Kelsey Fitzsimmons, she tried to fire it allegedly at the officer. Didn't go off the first time. She tapped it. She tried to rack it. And then she was going to fire again. And the officer put 2 shots in her. She ended up in the hospital. Here we are. Let's see what the defense has to say about this situation.
Mr. Brandon, would you like to make an opening statement at this time?
I would, Your Honor. Thank you.
And feel free to stay there, or you can go to the podium, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Yes, please.
Counsel, ladies and gentlemen. Kelsey, no. Kelsey, no. You don't say that when you're staring at the muzzle of a gun pointed at you.
Maybe you do.
You say that to a person who has a gun to their head. And you don't shoot someone in the chest when they are seeking clearly to only harm themselves. And when you do that, you quickly realize, Your Honor, that you need to adjust the narrative to save yourself. That's what this case is about, Your Honor. On June 30th, 2025, Ms. Fitzsimmons' entire world imploded, was destroyed when her fiancé, Justin Elaine, obtained a restraining order behind her back with unchallenged, untested allegations at the Essex Probate Court. And he took away, at 4:30 in the afternoon, took away custody of her 4-month-old Caden in an ex parte fashion. The North Andover police had to serve that order. And in the late afternoon of the 30th, 3 male officers, Lieutenant Daly, Officers Noonan and Houston, they went to go serve the order. Their job was to take away the baby from Kelsey, a new mother with a 4-month-old named Caden, take her firearms, and give the baby to Mr. Elaine. And that day, Your Honor, Kelsey stood in her house in humiliation in front of her police colleagues and friends. And she immediately processed all of the implications of this order, Your Honor. Everything that this fiancé had accomplished for himself without any chance for Kelsey to defend herself. He took away her baby. He likely cost her her career. He publicly betrayed her as her fiancé. He walked away from their impending marriage.
Dang.
She realized she couldn't any longer afford her house alone, so that was going as well. Her gun rights are stripped, and again, the humiliation that she's being served by people who she is friends and colleagues with from the North Andover Police Department. At that point, Your Honor, as she had this evolving set of revelations about how her life was in complete destruction, she made a decision for herself. And it's a decision that takes your breath away. It's a young mother who just minutes before they got there thought she had everything going for her, going back to work. She's on the schedule for July 3rd to go back to work. She decides to end her life with her firearm in her bedroom. She knows her firearm, her firearm is in her bedroom, and she tells the police something else. She tells them the guns are in the basement because she doesn't want to involve them. The idea of harming them, the evidence will show, is ludicrous. The evidence will show that she's trying to get them away from her, Your Honor. She tells them the guns are completely in another location in the home. She's told that she needs to pack a bag for the person that's taking her baby away. So she has to walk around the house, pack a bag for Caden. She has it in her mind, the evidence will show, that she doesn't want them around for this event, this horrible thing she's going to do. She goes upstairs to pack the bag, Your Honor. Officers Houston and Noonan accompany her upstairs. She keeps, several times, she gives them items to have them go back downstairs with. She hands them baby seats and clothes and books and thereabouts and says, "Take these downstairs, please." you'll see that evidence, and as a fact finder, you will see that that's evidence of her state of mind, that she has no desire to harm any of her colleagues and friends. She's got no motive, she's got no reason to, and her actions are completely inconsistent with that. She's trying to get rid of them so she can have a minute in her room, not to do things that every young mother might want to do, but to get her gun and kill herself because her life's over in her mind. So at that point, Your Honor, apparently what was later learned to be her mom comes in the house, and she's understandably upset. She's saying, how can you take away a baby from their mother? That's when Houston goes downstairs. So part one is accomplished, that Houston is downstairs. Houston's a friend. Houston was invited to her wedding.
Dang.
He goes downstairs. Noonan is still upstairs on the landing. You'll see from all the visual evidence, Judge, it's a stairway that goes up the small landing. Kelsey's bedroom's on the right, the baby's room's on the left. It's a pretty simple layout. Noonan stays up there. At this point, Kelsey makes it from the baby's room where she got some stuff across the landing to her bedroom, and she's in her bedroom when I don't want to say disturbance, but when Mrs. Page, her mom, gets here. What we later learn is that she gets here. And Houston goes downstairs. Noonan, in a moment after Houston went downstairs, Noonan starts to go downstairs, and that was Kelsey's moment. Why? Because she wanted to do this herself, and she didn't want to involve Noonan. I told you about Houston. Noonan, she had been on extremely difficult calls with. She considered him a friend. She knew he had a wife and a child. Zero motive, the evidence will show, for her to ever want to harm this gentleman. She's alone in the room. Noonan's down the stairs. She reaches into the corner and picks up one of her handguns. She'll tell you that she is acutely aware as a police officer that she doesn't want them involved. She doesn't want them to be a part of this in any way. She keeps the gun close to her stomach area and walks over to an open spot in the room.
Dang.
She raises the gun to her head. Noonan is not even back in the room yet, Your Honor. So I don't want you as the fact finder to be looking for evidence that, well, maybe she swung it in his direction when he was coming in. Maybe she was pointing it at him at some quick transient time. That's not the case at all, Your Honor. That will not be the evidence. The evidence will be that Ms. Fitzsimmons had the gun to her temple, and then Noonan walks in, and he sees someone who is exhibiting only harm to herself and to no other. And we've discussed this pre-trial, and there'll be some evidence and discussion and cross-examination, Your Honor, about the Code of Mass Regulations that we discussed as it relates to, or doesn't relate to, Noonan's state of mind, Your Honor, that he's, as a firearms instructor and a SWAT team member and a former Lawrence police officer as well as North Andover, he knew or should have known that he was in trouble, that he was in violation of that CMR, the Code of Mass Regulation that I just mentioned. And he knows he has to adjust the narrative, Your Honor. Getting back to the incident, Your Honor. Kelsey has the gun to her head. She's trying to steel herself.
Dang.
Noonan comes around the corner and sees it, and the evidence will show that he is not some super cool James Bond type law enforcement officer, that he has a look of panic on his face, and that he's flustered. And certainly no one's faulting him for that. But that's what he looked like, and that's what the evidence will show. And that's when the words, Kelsey, no, are uttered. No law enforcement officer, Judge, the evidence will show, in his right mind would bargain with someone who has their hand on the trigger and the muzzle in your face. The evidence here, Judge, will show that he was trying to tell her not to kill herself. The evidence will show that Kelsey never pointed a gun at him and that this was a mistake. It was a brain freeze. It was a mechanical thing. It was someone seeing a gun and shooting. How do we know this even more so? Besides the lack of motive and the utterances that he made. We know because of the location of the firearm, Your Honor. The firearm, when Kelsey was shot in the chest and went flying backwards and landed on her back, and Daly will tell you that she's on her back.
Jeez.
The gun was under her leg. If Miss Fitzsimmons is pointing the gun at Noonan, and falls backwards, how does that gun swing around to get under her leg if she's pointing it the way Noonan says? The evidence will show that's not consistent with the laws of physics.
It's a fair point.
It is, however, consistent with somebody holding the gun to their temple, so it's already to the side of your body, if not behind you when you go flying. So the location of the firearm, the evidence will show, is also consistent with what Kelsey says happened. Finally, in terms of the panic, the flustered look on his face, Ms. Fitzsimmons was only anywhere from 3 feet to then maybe 7 feet away from him in this entire incident. And that might be where the view comes in, Your Honor, the room. And he missed her in the first shot. He's a firearms instructor. He's a SWAT guy. 25 years, he misses someone from 3 to 7 feet away. Hits the air conditioner. That's panic, Your Honor. That's not cool, calculated action. That's panic. So Daly comes in. He goes over to Kelsey. He administers first aid. He rolls her to her side, sees the gun under her leg, behind her and under her. Your Honor is going to be the fact finder. You're going to consider all these things, the physical location of everything, the way things unfolded, the lack of a motive, what makes sense, what doesn't, what's doubtful. Anything that's doubtful is obviously not consistent with what the Commonwealth wants to have happen here. It's consistent with maintaining her presumption of innocence. Only 2 people were in that room. There were no body cameras. The police never interviewed Kelsey Fitzsimmons. They circled the wagons immediately, right at the scene. You'll see everybody treating Noonan like he's the victim. They circled the wagons immediately around Noonan. And everybody wants to defend Noonan in this situation, and no one even took a minute to think about whether Kelsey may have a different take on things, may have something different to say. Why? Why did they ignore Kelsey and circle around Noonan? Probably millions of reasons for the town. Millions of reasons. Ms. Fitzsimmons will tell you, Judge, she served orders herself. She served restraining orders. She's a delivery person. No one's going to be going after a police officer, no less someone that she knows, cares for, and has made repeated actions to get them out of the room. She will tell you, with some indignation, I suspect, that she would never point a firearm at a fellow law enforcement officer. So for all these reasons, Judge, as the fact finder, I request, I ask you and I trust you to well and truly try the case, and I am confident that after the evidence is in, Your Honor will find Ms. Fitzsimmons not guilty. Thank you.
Well, that's convincing. I mean, shout out to the defense attorney. I think he did a great job. It's a convincing story. I'm interested to see what the evidence shows, because with this being a he said, she said case, I mean, somebody's going to have to show something that's not just what the officer said or what Kelsey said. So it'll be interesting to see the forensics in this case, especially considering what he said about the gun being underneath her leg as and after she fell down. That's a big piece of this. Also, talking about her fiance and the stuff that he's been involved in, and maybe some of the issues that Kelsey had with the police department. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and in the chat. All right, it'll be an interesting case to say the least. We're gonna follow along with it, and y'all make sure you stay tuned in and follow this case, because we'll be covering different segments of this trial. We won't cover the whole thing here, and actually we're going to be live streaming it on the Jury of Your Peers channel, but we will have the interesting testimony right after this took place. They had a testimony from one of the officers who helped respond to the scene, Officer Daly, and he's going to talk about some of the things that happened while they were there. And then eventually we'll get to hear from the officer that actually shot Kelsey as well. So I've got another story I want to talk to y'all about. Again, thank you for the love and support. There's over 8,000 of y'all up in this thing. Hopefully every single one of you have liked the video. It's free, guys. All right. I know I beg for likes. It's because it takes less than a second to do, and it's free. Let's get into this situation. This one is kind of funny, and it's not breaking news. So I'm going to switch this up. We've got to talk about this viral moment that took place in the Georgia Supreme Court. If you guys didn't hear about this, this is absolutely hilarious. So the Georgia Supreme Court was hearing arguments for a case that we're actually going to get into and talk about in detail. The case involved a woman who was in an altercation with the man. She ended up shooting and killing the man. And to find out, she didn't go about things the way that she should have. She claimed self-defense, and now that man is dead and she's serving life in prison. Yes. But this case is, they're trying to appeal this case before the Georgia Supreme Court. And in a part of this court proceedings, one of the attorneys that's involved in this case is actually going to be caught lying. I won't say she was lying, but this attorney is going to be caught using cases that don't exist. Allegedly cases that were made and created by AI. Yeah, it gets absolutely insane. And then we're actually going to do a little bit of a rewind and talk to you guys about this appeal. But check this out. Shout out to Anna Bauer for posting this. It says, an absolutely excruciating moment at the Georgia Supreme Court this week. Justice Peterson pressed the state attorney, Deborah Leslie, over her citing her citations to cases that apparently don't exist. Oh, this is embarrassing. Check this out. Oh, and I've got to unmute this for you guys. Hold on one second. Jeez, man.
So before you sit down,
Yes,
there's
sir.
one more thing I need to ask you about, unfortunately. In reviewing the trial court's order denying the motion for new trial, there are at least 5 citations to cases that don't exist. And there's at least 5 more citations to cases that do not support the proposition for which they're cited, including 3 quotations that don't exist. My understanding is that you prepared the order for new trial, the denial order for the trial court. Were those citations in the version of the order that you submitted to the trial court?
No, Your Honor, I do not believe so. They were not. I did prepare an order. That order was revised.
So those non-existent cases were cited in your initial brief opposing the motion for new trial.
She's looking through her paper. It's not going to help you. Not going to help you.
Your Honor, I'm not aware of that, but I would be glad to research that and provide the court with a supplement.
Okay, we'll get a briefing order out directing.
Oh man, that's embarrassing. So let's actually get into what this case is about. We're going to talk about Hannah Payne and this life sentence and what went on in this entire case. Guys, if you haven't seen this case, it gets really, really sad. And this man lost his life. The reason he did, you'll be shocked and surprised about. Check this out.
And I want to pose a question to you. How much can the citizen's arrest laws protect you? That's really the big question that has been raised in court today. Hannah Payne, the woman convicted of chasing 62-year-old Kenneth Herring down after a hit and run and then shooting and killing him, has been in court. She's appealing her life sentence.
Crazy.
The Georgia Supreme Court is listening to oral arguments in which Payne's new attorney argues that her lawyers during the trial didn't do enough to prove her actions were in self-defense and fell under the umbrella of a citizen's arrest. You've probably heard us say that several times if you're familiar with the news in this area. Our digital team has been monitoring that hearing. We do want to give you a portion of it if we can.
The state told the jury once she poked the bear, he was allowed to defend himself. And it said she had no right, no powers to stop him. He had no obligation to listen to her. And that once she approached, he was allowed to defend himself however he wanted. In other words, trial counsel's failure to understand the law dictated the result of this trial, regardless of the facts. And that is why this was ineffective assistance of counsel. I want to talk about the strategy counsel did choose, right? In this case, he decided on false imprisonment, that his defense is going to be that no false imprisonment occurred. And he chose that strategy precisely because other avenues based on his legal mistake were unavailable. He believed, probably wrongly, that if the victim of a false imprisonment can potentially escape, that means the crime has not occurred. And of course, that's not true. As we know from the cases cited in my brief, when someone is falsely imprisoned, if you are locked in a basement, for instance, the fact that you could shimmy out a window does not mean that the person is innocent of the crime. Here, trial counsel argued that because potentially Mr. Herring could have driven around up on the curb in order to get away from Ms. Payne after she stopped in front of his car, that meant no false imprisonment occurred. But that's not the law, and it was also contradicted by so many things in the record. First off, we have Hannah Payne's call to 911. So she talked to the 911 dispatch operator who tells her, don't chase, be safe. And she says, I'm just going to stop in front of him. I want to stop him from causing another accident.
Counsel, let me interrupt you and just ask you a fundamental question at the outset. Is it your position that the citizen's arrest statute that was in effect at the time permitted Ms. Payne to follow the victim from the scene of this accident and detain him, confront him?
Yes.
And if so, how do you get to that result based on the wording of the statute that allows, at the time, somebody to prevent the escape of a fleeing felon and not someone who's fleeing from a misdemeanor?
That's a good question.
First off, you're under Pinckney v. State, a Court of Appeals case cited in my brief. The Court of Appeals held that a police officer whose post-certification had lapsed could, as a private citizen, perform a stop of someone else, a traffic stop, even if the offense was only a misdemeanor. Second, here,
interesting.
This Mr. Herring did commit crimes that indeed could be considered felonies. But not just that he disregarded.
Does that case allow someone to, after making the stop, to then engage with the person the way Ms. Payne did?
Well, Your Honor, the record is conflicted on how Ms. Payne engaged with him. It's possible that what it allowed was for the police officer to stop somebody using his lights, pull them over, and then talk to them. I don't know if it went further than that. Really, all that reasonableness questioning is up to the jury. Could they determine that what she did was reasonable? And while there were some witnesses who said that Ms. Payne approached aggressively and knocked on the window with her cell phone, Ms. Payne's own testimony was that she had her cell phone out and she said, hey, police are on the way, I need you to step out of the car. And there are good reasons she would want Mr. Herring to step out of the car. After all, he had just blown through a red light, collided with a semi-trailer, disregarded police commands, floored it into traffic, right? She had witnessed all of those things.
Kind of scary if you think
about it.
So
her reasonable concern at that point is that if he stays in the car, he might hit her or he might continue to flee and hurt other people. There was a real risk to the public that she was avoiding. more heightened than in your typical citizen's arrest case where someone is stopping like a shoplifter. And for that reason, I think the statute.
How long were they stopped at the scene of the accident before?
And that's an interesting point. I would wonder and be interested to know what's allowed by law when it comes to using your gun in a citizen's arrest, because I think that's a part of the situation as well. Now, I think the gun came in later, not as a part of her stopping, but how that would play out, maybe we'll see it in another case. If this gets to go back to court, I'll be interested to see. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Chase ensued.
20 minutes, Your Honor.
Your position is that under Pinckney, a citizen has the right to chase a defendant or a victim who's leaving the scene of an accident.
Your
for
Honor,
a mile, 2 miles, how many ever miles it takes, and block them in, detain them, and confront them in their car.
Yes, Your Honor, that's my take. And I think, in fact, just in our daily life, when we
How does that square with the wording of the statute that says if the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion? Why does the statute refer to a felony if you can do this for somebody who's committed a misdemeanor?
Because I believe the statute also says a misdemeanor committed in their presence, Your Honor.
I'm talking about the language of the statute that refers to somebody escaping or attempting to escape.
Well,
which is theoretically what this victim was trying to do.
Well, first off, if somebody floors into traffic impaired in a disabled vehicle, they have already arguably committed aggravated assault, right? If you strike somebody with a car, you cause an apprehension, a reasonable apprehension.
If you cause a traffic accident?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's an aggravated assault?
And
how is that the case?
Okay, you were just listening in as the woman who has been convicted of murdering a hit-and-run driver has essentially appealed her case. She's trying to have her life sentence taken away. By the way, if you want to listen to Hannah's testimony, Hannah Payne is who we're talking about here, or victim impact statements or anything else related to this case, perhaps hearing from Kenneth Herring's family, that's the person who died from this. We have all of that video available to you on fox5atlanta.com.
And shout out to Fox 5. This will be interesting to see how this plays out. Shockingly, the state attorney there has some explaining to do, and I need to go back to that article and to that post, because there was actually, the judge actually went back and said, hey, you need to explain what went on here. And I'll show that to you guys here in a second. So if you look at this update, it says that the Georgia Supreme Court issued an order directing counsel for the state to file a sworn affidavit providing a complete explanation for the filing that included non-existent cases and other errors. They got to stop using ChatGPT for this stuff. And you can see the written order here, which is absolutely insane. And we've got an attorney here that says, unpopular opinion, withdraw the case and move on. No deceit alleged. This is AI growing pains. Yep. Turning it into discipline, and a discipline theater is a witch hunt. The bench should adapt by focusing on prompt correction. Sensible AI uses expectations and proportional responses. Yes, but relying on it as an attorney, I mean, is that something that should be allowed? I don't know. You guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat. All right, y'all, I'm gonna set you free. It is time to go. Thank y'all for the love. Big shout out to my beautiful, awesome, amazing Amy E for the super sticker. And thank you to everybody who liked the video. If y'all haven't yet, make sure you like the video on your way out. We've got Greg Dolezal, Senator Greg Dolezal, coming on the show tomorrow morning. It is going to be a great time. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. We got a lot to talk about. Fannie Willis, Nathan Wade, special committee. We're going to talk about Sharia law. If y'all haven't seen that viral video that's gone out, we're going to talk about the voting here, Dominion, all of it we're going to get into. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow at 11 a.m. And I'm actually going to send you guys over there when this live stream is over, just so you can hit the reminder button and you don't miss tomorrow's interview. I appreciate y'all. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, you know what to do. Keep growing, keep pushing, keep it classy. We gone. Peace. Thank y'all for the love.